Hello, and welcome back to my channel. My subjects, I don't know. So, today, to keep things a little less common, I will be doing something other than a religious video for today. So instead, I'll provide you a free reading of one of my Fnaf books. And, see how that goes. This is just a test to see if maybe I can, provide some sort of kind of entertainment. Now, I will be only reading Into the Pit because I can't be asked to read the whole entire book. And I know that a lot of people hate reading and prefer audiobooks. I'm the kind of person that that prefers audiobooks than reading. But since audiobooks, cost moolah, I'm here to provide y'all with, free reading. This will also help me with acting and doing different voices. The dead possum's still there, Oswald said. Oswald was looking out the passenger's window at the gray furry corpse on the side of the road. Somehow it looked even deader than it had yesterday. Last night's rain hadn't helped. Nothing looks deader than a dead possum, Oswald's dad said. Except this town, Oswald mumbled, looking at the boarded-up storefronts and the display windows, which were displaying nothing but dust. What's that? His dad said. He was already wearing the dumb red vest they put him in when he worked the deli corner at the snack space. Oswald wished he'd wait to put it on until after he dropped them at school. This town, Oswald said louder this time. This town, Oswald said louder this time. This town looks deader than a dead possum. His dad laughed. Well, I don't guess I can argue with that. 3 years ago, when Oswald was 7, there had actually been stuff to do here. A movie theater, a game and card store, and an ice cream shop with amazing waffle cones. But then, the mill had closed. The mill had basically been the reason the town existed. Oswald's dad had lost his job, and so had hundreds of other kids' moms and dads. Lots of families had moved away, including Oswald's best friend, Ben, and his family. Oswald's family had stayed because his mom's job at the hospital was steady, and they didn't want to move far away from Grandma. So Dad ended up with a part-time job at the snack space, which paid $5, an hour less than he'd make at the mill. And Oswald watched the town die. Sorry if I'm bad at this. I don't have like a line reader or anything, so I lose track very easily. One business after another shut down, like the organs in a dying body. because nobody had the money for movies or games or amazing waffle cones anymore. Are you excited for school? It's the last. Are you excited? It's the last day of school. Dad asked. His dad asked. It was one of those questions adults always ask, like, "How's your day?" And "Did you brush your teeth?" Oswald shrugged. "I guess, but there's nothing to do. With Ben gone, school's boring, but home's boring too." "When I was 10, I wasn't home in the summer until I got called for supper," his dad said. "I rode my bike and played baseball and got into all kinds of trouble." "Are you saying I should get in trouble?" Oswald said. "No, I'm saying you should have fun." His dad pulled into the drop-off lane in front of the Westbrook Elementary. "Have fun." He made it sound so easy. Oswald walked through the school, double doors, and ran smack into Dylan Cooper, the last person he wanted to see. Oswald was apparently the first person Dylan wanted to see, though, because his mouth spread in a wide grin. Dylan was the tallest kid in 5th grade and clearly enjoyed looming over his victims. "Well, if it isn't Oswald the Ocelot," he said, his grin spreading impossibly wider. "That one gets old, does it?" That one never gets old, does it?" Oswald walked past Dylan and was relieved when his tormentor chose not to follow him. When Oswald was in the 5th grade, classmates were preschoolers. There was a cartoon on one of the little kid channels about a big pink ocelot named Oswald. As a result, Dylan and his friends had started calling him Oswald the Ocelot. On the first day of kindergarten, and had never stopped. Dylan was the kind of kid who'd pick on anything that made you different. If it hadn't been Oswald's name, it would have been his freckles or his cowlick. The name-calling had gotten much worse this year in U.S. history, when they'd learned that the man who shot John F. Kennedy was named Lee Harvey Oswald. Oswald would rather be an ocelot than an assassin. Since it was the last day of school, there was no attempt at doing any kind of real work. Mrs. Macham had announced the day before that students were allowed to bring their electronics, as long as they took responsibility for anything getting lost or broken. This announcement meant that no effort would be made toward any educational activities of any kind. Oswald didn't have any modern electronics. True, there was one laptop at home, but the whole family shared it, and he wasn't allowed to bring it to school. He had a phone, but it was the saddest, most out-of-date model imaginable, and he didn't want to take it out of his pocket because he knew any kid who saw it would make fun of how pathetic it was. So while other kids played games on their tablets or handheld consoles, Oswald sat. After just sitting became intolerable, he took out a notebook and pencil and started to draw. He wasn't the best artist in the world, but he could draw well enough that his images were identifiable. And there was a certain cartoony quality about his drawings that he liked. The best thing about drawing, though, was that he could get lost in it. It was like he fell into the paper and became part of the scene he was creating. It was a welcome escape. He didn't know why, but lately he had been drawing mechanical animals, bears, bunnies, and birds. He imagined them being human-sized and moving with the jerkiness of robots in an old science fiction movie. They were furry on the outside, but the fur covered a hard metal skeleton filled with gears and circuits. Sometimes he drew the animals, exposed the metal skeleton, or sketched them with the fur peeled back to show some of the mechanical workings underneath. It was a creepy effect, like seeing a person's skull peeking out from beneath their skin. Oswald was so immersed in his drawing that he was startled when Mrs. Macham turned off the lights to show a movie. Movies always seemed like a teacher's final act of desperation on the day before break, a way to keep the kids quiet and relatively still for an hour, and a half before setting them loose for the summer. The movie Mrs. Macham chose was, in Oswald's opinion, too babyish for a room full of fifth graders. It was about a farm with talking animals, and he had watched it before. But he watched it again because, really, what else did he have to do? At recess, kids stood around tossing the ball ball back and forth, and talking about what they were going to do over the summer. I'm going to football camp. I'm going to basketball camp. I'm going to hang out at my neighborhood pool. I'm going to stay with my grandparents in Florida. Oswald sat on a bench and listened. For him, there would be no camps, no pool memberships, and no trips because there was no money. So he'd draw pictures, play his old video games that he'd already beaten 1,000 times, then maybe go to the library. If Ben was still here, it would be different. Even if they were just doing the same old stuff, they'd be doing it together, and Ben could always make Oswald laugh. Riffing on video game characters or doing a perfect impression of one of their teachers, he and Ben had fun, no matter what they did. But now a summer without Ben yawned before him, wide and empty. Most days, Oswald's mom worked from 12 p.m. until 12 a.m., so his dad had to make their dinner. Usually, they got by on frozen meals like lasagna, or chicken pot pie, or on cold cuts and potato salad from the snack space deli that were still good enough to eat but not good enough to sell. When Dad did cook, it was usually something that required boiling water. While Dad got their dinner ready, Oswald's job was to feed Jinx, their very spoiled black cat. Oswald often thought that he used about the same amount of cooking skill and opening Jink's can of stinky cat food as his dad used in his dinner preparations. Tonight, Oswald and his dad were sitting down to plates of blue box mac and cheese and some canned corn. His dad had zapped in the microwave. It was a very yellow meal. You know, I was thinking, his dad said, squirting ketchup onto his macaroni and cheese. Why did he do that? Oswald wondered. I know you're old enough to stay home by yourself some, but I didn't like the idea of you staying by yourself the whole day while your mom and I are at work. I was thinking, you should ride into town with me in the mornings, and I could drop you off at the library. You could even read, surf the net. Oswald couldn't let that one slide. How out of date how out of date could his dad be? Nobody says surf the net anymore, Dad. They do now. Because I just said it. His dad forked up some macaroni. Anyway, I thought you could hang out in the library in the mornings. When you get hungry, you could head over to Jeff's Pizza for a slice and a soda. And I thought I could pick you up there once my shift is over at 3. Oswald considered for a moment. Jeff's Pizza was kind of weird. It wasn't dirty exactly, but it was run down. The vinyl on the booth sets had been repaired with duct tape, and the plastic letters had fallen off on the menu board above the counter. So the listed toppings included pepperoni and hamburger. It was clear that Jeff's Pizza used to be something bigger and better than it now was. There were tons of unused floor space and lots of unused electronical outlets along the base of the walls. Also, on the far wall was a small stage, even though there was no performances there, not even so much as a karaoke night. It was a strange place, sad, and not what it had once been like the rest of this town. That being said, the pizza was decent, and more important, it was the only pizza in town, if you didn't count the kind from the frozen food department and the snack space. The few good restaurants in town, including Gino's Pizza and Marco's Pizza, which unlike Jeff's had real pizza maker names, had closed their doors not long after the meal had. So you'll give me the money for pizza? Oswald asked, since Dad's job loss. Oswald's allowance had dwindled to practically nothing. His dad smiled, a kind of sad smile. It seemed to Oswald, son, we're bad off. But we're not so bad off. I can't spot you $3.50 for a slice and a soda. Okay, Oswald said. It was hard to say no to a warm, gooey cheese slice. Since it wasn't a school night and wouldn't be again for quite some time, Oswald stayed up after. Dad went to bed and watched an old Japanese monster movie with Jinx curled up, purring on his lap. Oswald had seen a lot of B-grade Japanese horror films, but this one, Zinderlex, just looked like a giant dragon thing versus Mecha Cinderlex was new to him. As always, Cinderlex just looked like a giant dragon thing, but Mecha Cinderlex reminded him of the mechanical animals he drew when he stripped them down to their fur. He laughed at the movie's special effects. The train Cinderlex destroyed was clearly a toy, and at how the actors' lip movements didn't match the dubbed in English. Somehow, though, he always found himself rooting for Cinderlex, even though he was just a guy in a rubber suit. Somehow, he managed to have a lot of personality. In bed, he tried to count his blessings. He didn't have Ben, but he had monster movies and the library and lunchtime pizza slices. It was better than nothing, but it still wasn't going to be enough to keep him going all summer. Please, he wished, his eyes closed tight. Please let there be something interesting. Let something interesting happen. Oswald woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. The coffee he could do without, but the bacon smelled amazing. That's it. I'm not. I'm not gonna read the whole book. Not today, at least. If this gets enough traction, I may do a part 2, and then I'll not only just finish Into the Pit story, but I'll then after that finish. I'll finish the rest of the book. But of course, that's only if this gets enough traction. You know, I'm not really good at focusing, and that took a lot out of me. Also, I hope my voices sound very different and not alike. But yeah, that's it. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and if I get enough traction on this, I may do it again. You may be asking why. Yeah, you see, reading a book for 22 minutes straight is too much for me. I can't. I physically can't. I took a lot of breaks, drank a lot of water, cleared my throat. I was very close to just giving up entirely and being like, you know what? No, I'm not going to upload this. No, I'm not going to do this. I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But, you know, I wanted to provide y'all with some variety and, you know, something different. After this will be, of course, a religious video. Or, it depends. I don't know what will be after this. I can't promise anything. But yeah, if y'all did enjoy this, please, you know, please, just please. I'm not going to try to annoy y'all with that. But yeah, other than that, have a wonderful evening, afternoon, morning, and or night. I'll see you whenever I'm done hibernating. Goodbye, my subjects. Peace.